All right, today we've got a 2014 JKU. This is a Dana 30 front axle, no locker. He's had some problems and needs some gears in it. So we're gonna show you today how to tear this front end down and how to get it taken apart properly without damaging anything. The very first thing we've done, go ahead, before you start anything else, drop the cover off the front, spray it out with a little brake parts cleaner, and let that be kind of dripping out before we get on to everything else. The very first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna loosen this tie rod. You get a hammer, hit it right here really hard a couple times. All right, so we got our tie rod off, pulled out of the way, just the one end. Just need to have room to get all this out. Now we're gonna come around to the side here and we're gonna look at your brake caliper. You're gonna take off these two bolts, the one on the top here and the one down here on the bottom. You take both of these off and we're gonna move this brake caliper to the side and hang it up with a piece of wire so that it doesn't overstress this brake line here. So give me just a second, we're gonna do that. By the way, this is a 21 millimeter. I like to use a long handle ratcheting wrench. It helps a lot. All right, now we have our brake caliper supported with a piece of coat hanger out of the way. And we've taken our brake rotor off as well. It just sits on there. Now we've got 3 of these bolts, 1, 2, and then a third one in the front. We got this little 13 millimeter 12-point socket. Run them right out of there. We'll go along the front, do the front. Next, we need to get our ABS sensor bolt loose. We're gonna go ahead and pull that out real fast. That is a 5 millimeter Allen wrench. This will sometimes be kind of stuck. You just want to kind of wiggle it out. Do not pry this with a screwdriver. You will break it. Next, after we get the sensor out, we're gonna come back here. We're just gonna give a couple taps right here, not really hard. We'll tap here. And that axle should jump right out of there. There you go. The axle is ready to come on out. And it's pulled, it's out. Now all we gotta do is do the same thing over on the passenger side. Okay, now that we got all the outsides and that taken apart, now we gotta take the drive shaft off for the front axle here. This is an aftermarket drive shaft, but it connects us exactly the same as a factory JK drive shaft would. So we're gonna take our 15 millimeter. We'll pop all these out. Two. 3, and 1 more. And that gets our drive shaft disconnected from the yoke. And that'll sit out of the way like there. No problems, no worries. All right, now it's time to drop out the main carrier. Here's where you got to start paying attention to things. First of all, in the JK, the shims are going to be right here on the outside. Those shims are different. When we take this apart, we need to make sure we remember and keep track of where each shim came from on each side. We also need to keep track of the orientation of these caps. If you look closely, this one's already stamped E right here and an E facing down. If you look here, here's an E facing down as well. If you look over here on the passenger side, there's a a F in its normal orientation, and you look right here really close, you can see an F, or most of an F, in its normal orientation. That helps us keep these caps exactly where they need to go. And yes, this ring gear is very damaged. That's why we are doing this on this axle. So we're gonna take a 5/8 socket, and we're gonna pull off each one of these caps, and we're gonna set these out of the way, and then we're gonna pull the ring gear out, and then we're gonna hold on to these shims to make sure we don't lose track of the shims while we take all this apart. Okay, now I've got the caps out, and the differential is just barely being hung in here like this. Sometimes they'll fall right out, so be very, very careful. So what I've done here is I've got my table laid out with a paper towel, and my caps are exactly oriented how they will be, and I'm gonna set my differential down so I don't lose track of where everything goes, and that way I know where everything came from. So I'm gonna do as much of this one-handed as I can, and then I'm gonna put the phone down. So what I'm gonna try to do here is pry this out just a little bit. There it goes. I'm gonna drop this pry bar. And now the carrier is coming out. So I'm gonna reach in with my finger and try to grab a hold of that shim. Here's the shim. I'm gonna take that shim, I'm gonna put it right here on this side so that I know where it came from. And then this shim, can't get it mixed up. So I gotta set the camera down, give me just a minute. So now I've got everything out. Here's my cap and my shim. And here's my cap and my shim. Of course, now that's turned around, this is gonna be each side as it would sit in the differential, just like this. And that way I've got no parts mixed up. I'm looking this over, and all these spider gears appear to be in very good condition, a tad loose, but everything appears to be in good condition. So I'm not gonna replace those. So they look really nice. We are gonna replace all the bearings in here, and now we've gotta get the pinion out. So now we have the pinion in here. However, look at all this. Before we can go any further, I've got to get all these chunks out of here. So I got to clean up all these chunks and get all of this nastiness out of here. We don't need any of that staying. All right, so now we've got to take our pinion apart. First of all, inside here is a nut. And on this particular JK axle, this is going to be a 28 millimeter. So 28 millimeter. And I have a big Milwaukee impact. This in Milwaukee will do it. I'll have to hold on to this other side with my hand and then hold on to the impact while I take this apart. So give me just a second and put the camera down again. I'm gonna take this apart. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold on really tight with my left hand and my right hand. I'm gonna hold the impact, and it's gonna come right out. All right, so now we've got our nut loosened. I'm gonna finish taking it off. Set my pan out of the way, and I'm gonna take a really big hammer. I'm gonna hit right here. I'm gonna knock that off. This one got a little slack in it, part of the problem. So this is our yoke. Our yoke comes right off. Now we gotta get our pinion out. And because we're not reusing any of this, you hit right on the threads, a couple good licks, and it ought to come out. There you go, it's out. Now we got the pinion out of the way. We're gonna stick a big pry bar into this seal surface. We're gonna pry the seal back out, and there's your seal. And there is the outer bearing and the little washer that goes underneath everything. We're gonna take that over here. We'll set it down. Again, with differentials, you make sure you keep track of everything and what order it came from. So this will be our crush sleeve. This is our bearing. This is our washer. This is our seal. And that's how that came apart. We're gonna set it right over here so we know how to put it back together. All right, okay, the next thing we did is we took a long punch from either side, and we drove out the race that sits inside here on the inner and on the outer. So we'll go from the inside out for the outer, and then we come around the front, and we'll go from the outside in for the inner, and that knocks the race right out of there, which is great. Now we have these axle seals to deal with right here. So what I do to make it simple is I get a long piece of tube, give a little knock, she falls right out. And then what I'll do is I'll do this piece of tube on the other side, slide it right in there, give it a knock, that one falls out too, and it's all done. This differential is completely torn down and ready for reassembly. That's another video. Y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching.